Just doing. Okay. Good morning and welcome everyone to the Commonwealth Managers Association Summer Webcast. And that's the CAM Summer Series Webcast. So this is our second of 3 webcasts, which would be held on the third Wednesday of each month. And correct me if I'm wrong. I am Letitia Burrell, going by Tish, her, she, and I am happy to be here this morning. I am sitting in for Kyle Lawrence, who is our CMA president, and he's a little under the weather this morning, so he's still on the webcast, but I'll be his voice for this morning. So we're happy to have you here, and I want to again welcome everyone, and this is our webcast for our second of the 3 series for neurodiversity. And our presentation for today is managing your best talent, your neurodivergent employees. And our speaker and presenter for this hour will be Marta Squadrito. And Marta comes to us with a Ph.D. and a wealth of knowledge in this topic. She is an experienced researcher and instructor in change management, organizational theory, talent management, inclusive leadership theory and development, and diversity and inclusion in the workplace. Marta received her master's in political and sociological sciences at the University of Messina in Italy. She earned her Ph.D. in public policy and administration at VCU. Marta has worked as a research associate at VCU Department of Education, or MERC, where she worked on a project that aimed to assess equity in the workplace for a state agency. She has served as a research and teaching assistant at the Wilder School in the fields of public budgeting, leadership theory, and research methodologies. So we are excited about our session today with Marta. And without further ado, I will turn it over to Marta. And before Marta starts, if you have questions, please drop them in the chat. We'll be monitoring the chat, or do a raise of hand if you will, and we'll be sure to take your questions. So again, without further ado, I'll turn it over to Marta, and take it away, Marta.
Thank you, Tisha. Thank you. It's really nice to be actually here to join you this month. Please, everyone, introduce yourself in the chat. I really want this session to be, interactive, and if you have any questions, like Tish said, drop them in the chat. And so at this point, please introduce yourself and where are you joining from, and maybe your agency, if you are a state employee, or even if you're not, actually. Okay, hi, Andrea Williams, the CJS. Okay, Megan Way, Anthony Nelson. Welcome, everyone. Oh, Vicky Harris, Chrissy. Oh, of course, from the Wilder School. Have definitely, when I see people from the Wilder School or associate. Robert Talton, Virginia Department, VDOT, Wilder School, yes. Special Services. Okay, Rain, okay. Abriel, hi, Abriel. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining. Thank you. So yes, this session is called Managing Your Best Talent. I want to first, really address the fact that, we're calling it managing your best talent, your neurodivergent employees, but really like the idea behind is that, when managed properly, all talent is going to be your best talent. But, it's just you are focusing on neurodivergent employees. Then July, I thought since we're having this session in July, I wanted to highlight the fact that July is Disability Pride Month. And on July 26th, we celebrate the 33rd anniversary of the passing of the Americans with Disability Act. And I really wanted to focus on, not like focus, but highlight Judy Heumann, who recently passed this year. And she was really the mother of the disability rights. And I really wanted to kind of, bring up your attention this quote from Judy Heumann. Disability only becomes a tragedy when society fails to provide the things we need to lead our lives. Job opportunities or barrier-free buildings, for example. It's not a tragedy to me that I'm living in a wheelchair. And, we'll kind of go back to this, but I really wanted to, again, start with this message, and it goes into like really managing the talent, managing the workplace properly to then, let people be their authentic self, even in their disability. That sometimes we frame it in a way that is a tragedy. So like the understanding of it. The agenda for today is going to be, we're going to talk about diversity, benefits, inclusion, neurodiversity, benefit of the neurodiversity in the workplace, your call, manager's call, growth opportunities and solution, accommodation, and then, we're going to conclude our conversation. But before we start, I would like, a PSA. I'm a diversity and inclusion in the workplace expert. Diversity and inclusion is an ever-evolving field. It evolves with the evolution of the individual and the workplace. I will definitely mention concepts and words that we won't have time to discuss further. Those are opportunities for you to get curious. We could have an entire session of this on this single concept and words, but today we are here specifically to discuss neurodiversity. So please reach out. If you would like to discuss further anything I mentioned today. I am at the HRM, and we provide free learning opportunities to state agencies, to teams. So please reach out in case. And definitely be curious. There is a lot of information out there. There is like a lot of learning opportunities. So one thing again, we're going to be talking about things. I'm going to be mentioning things that may be very new to you. So just to take a note and be curious. So we'll start with diversity. All of the diversity refers to all of the characteristics that make individuals unique. It is used to describe the various combinations of group and social differences: race, ethnicity, class, gender, identity, gender expression, sexual orientation, national origin, ability, disability, genetic information, medical conditions, such as pregnancy and childbirth. So when thinking about diversity, think about yourself. Think about your organization. How diverse are you? Or how exposed are you to diversity? Think out of the box. Diversity does not refer simply to gender, race, ethnicity, disability. So how many categories can you think of? Now, initially, public management had thought of diversity as gender, race, disability. But again, as the population gets increasingly diverse and redefines and challenges shared meanings and understanding, the definition of diversity we must refer to is really open-ended. It comes down to who you are and how are you different, and the intersection of these categories. It is also very important to emphasize that these characteristics define one's identity, and we must respect and honor. So, again, the definition of diversity may be very familiar to some, not so much, familiar. So I understand, and I want to honor and acknowledge that, there may be experts in this webinar, in this session, and, people that may not, but like, it's important to kind of, I always want to start with definitions because I think it's important to really, for us, to establish terms to just so we can kind of understand each other and, you know, define. And again, as much as diversity as definition is really open-ended. So the benefits of a diverse workforce are several, and, you know, very well established in research. And, you know, we can find so many research studies that really establish all the benefits of a diverse workforce. Organizations where women executives are more highly likely to have an innovation breakthrough in 2 years. Diversity increases innovation 20% by to 20%, improves decision-making quality by the 20%, and reduces risk by the 30%. Teams make better decisions than individuals 66% of the time, and diverse teams make better decisions 87% of the time. Although diversity can increase friction up to 15%, inclusion boosts results by 60%. Teams that follow an inclusive process make decisions 2 times faster, and more than 3 of 4 job seekers and employees say a diverse workforce is important to them when deciding where to work. So these are really just a few. But again, if we look at the research, everything is like, you know, all the benefits of diversity of diverse workforce are really well studied and established. Now, we can be successful as a diverse organization. So there is a caveat to that. So having a diverse workforce is going to lead to benefit, but we cannot be successful as a diverse organization, team, or entity without inclusion. In fact, the research also shows that diversity by itself won't lead to the benefits we just discussed. Inclusion is the active, intentional, and ongoing engagement with diverse people, practices, and communities in ways that increases one, cultural affirmation and respect, content knowledge, cognitive sophistication, and empathetic understanding of complex ways individuals interact with and within systems and organizations. So we must implement inclusive practices. We must strive to effectively manage our diverse talent. Otherwise, not only we will reap the benefit of diversity, but we'll lose this talent. So it's very important, again, to establish when we talk of managing people, you know, understanding their diversity and then understanding inclusive practices and establishing inclusive practices. So let's zoom in on diversity, which is a dimension of diversity. Neurodiversity is the idea that neurological differences like autism and ADHD are the result of normal natural variation in the human genome. I really like, I feel like this quote actually by Mila Kraslova, who is a Harvard's Business Review researcher, you know, around, about neurodiversity. I really like it because it really makes it in a nutshell, you know, explains how, you know, neurodiversity is essential to humanity, biodiversity is essential to life. So to me, this quote basically says it's like, it's not just natural, but it's also essential as much as, you know, biodiversity is essential to life. Now, when we talk about diversity, we are like trying to move from this medical model versus social model. So like, towards the social model of neurodiversity. So in the medical model, neurodiversity is seen as a deficit to fix, while in the social model, we are trying to see this as strength to support. Again, you know, I want you to also like, you know, keep in mind this Judy Human quote that we discussed at the beginning. So understanding how, you know, we look at disability, and in this case, neurodiversity. 1 in 5 people are neurodivergent, so it really is important for us, you know, as we manage talent to really understand neurodiversity. And, you know, globally, 10% of the population is dyslexic, 6% is dyspraxic, and 5% have ADHD, and 1 to 2% are autistic. So, you know, there is like actually, you know, you are more likely maybe to be managing someone with some sort of neurodiversity. So Emily, like I wanted to kind of, look at someone that may display some characteristics and discuss with you. Emily wears headphones at all time. Emily doesn't look right at you when you talk. And Emily leans over every 10 minutes to tighten her shoelaces. She can concentrate if they aren't tight. So what would be your first impression of someone, that displays behaviors or like this kind of attitudes as a manager? And please feel free to unmute yourself or to participate however best you decide. Introverted. Isha. Introverted, yes. I mean, that could be. Possibly autistic. Yes. And these are like really the surface, the things that we would notice that are, I would think Emily is easily distracted. Yes. Like, again, that's what I wanted. Thank you, Tisha, that's what I wanted to kind of, what would we think, as, from a manager point of view, like how would they perform? Yes, autistic spectrum. Yeah. And, because we have this idea, we have like in mind, we have this medical model, it's a disability. It's something that how can we fix it? And how would it be, how would it translate in the workplace? So Emily, on the surface, this is what, she displays. This is how she, looks like, how she kind of, how we can perceive her. At the same time, Emily has 2 master's degrees. Now, this is actually, a real profile of a study. It's, so this is not just a fictional Emily. I only changed the name, but this is actually from a study. Emily has 2 master's degrees with honors. Emily also has a gap of more than 2 years in her CV. It's a combination of mathematical ability and software development skills that is highly unusual. Emily is a data wizard. Emily is hardworking and never wants to take a break. When Emily's shoelaces are tied, she is the most productive employee. So would you ever think that under like the surface or like what you think, what you see, which are actually, real behaviors, right? Would you think that then there is this much talent? And, again, if we understand it, then, we can actually, the benefits of having, someone like this in your team.
Dr. Squadrito, can I ask a question?
Yes.
So oftentimes I've had staff that has these particular traits, right? But there's no medical documentation. There's nothing that says that maybe there is an autistic issue or mental health issue to address how to work with staff members with these particular traits. So how would you suggest that a manager or a leader who can identify, and the reason why I'm able to identify, because I do have family members who are on the autistic spectrum, and I can tell that there is something there, but they have never addressed it to me that they have any medical history of being on the autistic spectrum. So I am to treat them as I would treat anyone else. And I'm not giving any special treatment, but how would you suggest that we work with individuals that have these different traits?
Well, it's really like, because you would think that it's a special treatment, but it's not. It's actually, you adjusting the workplace to then, welcome these differences. This is actually right the point. The point you notice, and it's great on your part that you can notice the difference and you can pick up on those, differences, and you make it. It's not really a special treatment, because think of this. If you don't, it's basically something you are damaging, because, a workplace that doesn't have accommodations, works for people that are neurotypical. So basically that the person is put in a situation of disadvantage. So you think of it as a special adjustment, but if you really actually think of it, it's not. It's actually leveling the playing field. That's what it is. So it's, great again on your part that you can pick it up. And that's, and that what's gonna unlock, the best on that. Again, that's what's gonna make it like your best talent.
Yep. Okay.
So it's really like this, again, it's difficult to make the switch, because we are so accustomed to thinking that disability or like these differences are things that, are not typical. So that's not the norm. So am I making, actually, no, you're leveling the playing field, like in action. Thank you. And okay, so then we have the video. No, let me know if you can hear the sound. Can you hear the sound?
No, we
It's
can't hear
always
the
no.
sign, Marta.
It's always the, okay, so I think I have to.
You have to
Okay.
understand and then make sure that you put the whole parts when you share.
For example,
Now, yes, I believe.
Yes, we can
if a
hear
person
now.
were to say to me, wow, you're really good at thinking about concepts, for example, the equivalent of that for me would be to say to a person, wow, you're really good at breathing.
People think that you're thick.
They think that I can't read.
That we're dumb, that we're slow, we're uneducable. Actually, it's quite the opposite.
I'm neurodiverse because I am autistic.
I have something that's called Asperger's syndrome, which is an autistic spectrum disorder.
I'm dyslexic.
I have Asperger's syndrome.
I'm dyslexic and I also have dysgraphia.
I have dyslexia and dyscalculia.
I got an ADHD diagnosis a few years ago, and it was actually the first time in my life that I made sense to myself.
I just think it's the way my brain's wired up.
Just wired differently.
I am not seeing what everyone else is seeing. There's obviously a huge advantage to that, but we've only learned to appreciate this potential over the last few years.
One way of understanding neurodiversity is if we've got people who we call normal, we call them neurotypical, they can see the visual spectrum of colours going from red to indigo. Neurodiverse people, they might not be able to see blue, but they can see in infrared. Now you've got somebody in your team who can see in the dark. Do you want to have that person in your team? Of course you do.
Many of my strengths, I believe, come from my autism.
I'm good at retaining knowledge. I know where to find the knowledge.
My brain is incredibly logical. One of my main traits is I can take lots of different sort of level 2D drawings and then make them into a 3D model in my head and be able to spin them around.
I'm very good at spatial things. I built a kitchen in our house 12 years ago, bought all the bits from IKEA and fitted the whole thing. And somebody said to me, well, where did you make a plan of that? I didn't. I did it all in my head.
So ADHD is basically like watching 30 different channels at the same time and somebody else is holding the remote control. I am calm in situations where a lot of other people get really anxious. There's limited fear to actually make a decision, which I sometimes find very helpful in a business context, because sometimes we just have to decide something to be able to move ahead.
I can hold very large, very complex systems in mind.
The way I look at the world is black and white. It's not the grey areas in between. I can think logically, I can think straight down the middle, and it brings the team in together so that it's not going round and round in circles.
I think one of the biggest challenges for me is that neurological differences are invisible. Don't assume everyone else, just because they look like you or they have a similar job or that they think in the exact same way.
I would say definitely don't be afraid to talk about it.
For me, I would say speak to your managers and let them be aware. And I think by doing that, it makes you more confident and more freer.
It's not something that all of us are easy talking about, but the more we do talk about it, the more people understand and will appreciate the different abilities and the different gifts that neurodivergent people can actually bring to HSBC.
Any comments on the video? I was actually amazed, when people were talking and, all their capabilities, I'm like, okay, well, this sounds, yeah. Being able to hold, large pieces of information or the spatial capability, it's just, it definitely something that at least it amazes me. So these are actually, the benefits of neurodiversity. Neurodivergent employees increase the productivity of the company by almost 50%. Again, these are all the benefits that, we studied that are, established in research. Companies that employ neurodivergent employees experience increased profit and customer satisfaction. Unique perspective and diversity of thinking drive innovation. Disability inclusive companies gain as much as 28% higher revenue. Organizations that are inclusive of neurodiversity are more likely to attract and retain neurodivergent talent. 63% of neurotypical employees are also more likely to be attracted to and loyal to companies that support neurodivergent employees well. And
Marta,
getting
I have a
specific,
question
yes,
there.
yes,
On the previous slide,
yes.
where it says that employees are also more likely to be attracted to and loyal to companies that support the neurodivergent employees well. How can you give us an example of companies that you gleaned in your research that follow this particular comment that you have?
So that basically means that when employees, so that goes back to, the kind of, so usually people are more attracted to organizations that are, doing like public good, that are really invested, in, doing like right by disability or, they're like good for like the public, in the public eye. So there is that. But then, and so this kind of companies that support, if I'm getting like your question right, like are usually those companies that already, they already support all employees, meaning like they're gonna have like spaces, like accommodations wise, they are more respectful, they are, of like a disability, they understand, in their mission statement, there is something that indicates that are respectful, and they create these like spaces where, where it's not difficult to be yourself as a neurodivergent, as an employee with a disability. So that's really, what it comes down to, like this kind of companies. And, because sometimes not sometimes, most of the times it's going to be, most of the times, again, it's difficult to really frame disability, neurodiversity as something that we accept as natural. So it's going to be difficult to ask us to disclose or like share your disability, it's going to be, difficult to get accommodation when, usually accommodations are really, really easy to, it's like noise canceling headphones, a corner office, that's what it is. So to be like in a company that immediately, discloses, okay, if you need any kind of accommodation, like not even like put under like accommodation, how do you work best? Is it too much noise? Like not even talking about almost accommodations, but like, because then accommodations always makes you feel like, okay, this is kind of, we're talking about disability, right? But if you were talking about how can I make the workplace work for you, that's when you understand that, that employee, that neurodivergent employee is actually, it's not out of the norm. It's actually part of the. So that's usually the type of companies. And again, it is something that attracts mostly millennials and, Gen Z, because that's the type of, talent or employees that mostly care about, social causes and, all of that sort of things. That's something that for them is important. The study showed that it is important. So to understand, even if neurotypical, to work for an organization that frames disability that way, then for me it's important, okay? Because also, I understand that, the same way you are welcoming or like you are adjusting your place to welcome everybody, that means that also me in my diversity, I may not be, again, neurodivergent, but in my own diversity as an immigrant, right? Like, then, you are more likely to actually also be a workplace that accepts and where I can be authentic.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So getting specific, and going back to what, people in the video were saying, people with Asperger's perform thorough and attentive work. People with dyslexia tend to think out of the box. People with ADHD are more creative. People on the autism spectrum can also intensively focus and have high levels of expertise. And people with dysprasia are very empathetic. So there's like, also layers, like each individual, again, can have common features like this. So while every neurodivergent person is unique, because every person is unique, these are some of their common strengths. Now, the problem is that despite the benefits of a diverse workforce, all the layers, the benefits of a diverse workforce, with inclusive practices, and then neurodiversity in the workplace, neurodivergent individuals, neurodivergent people can be under 40% more productive, but 85% are unemployed. Unemployment rate can vary by type of neurodiversity. 85% of autistics are unemployed. 30% of people with ADHD are unemployed. And think of, again, from a manager perspective, think of the talent that you are not tapping in. All the people with this extremely focused expertise, data science capabilities, and that's, talent that you are not tapping in. So here is why your role is of fundamental importance. You are called to solve and manage the ever-changing talent puzzle. And the best way to do this is by being curious, learn, and understand more your talent. As mentioned already, while every neurodivergent person is unique, some of the common challenges that these individuals may face in the workplace are identified in the following slides. Now, we reframe these challenges as growth opportunities. So you will see that we will be talking about growth opportunities and then solutions. Because reframing them as such, it prompts us to think about them as opportunity for us to learn and grow. Our expertise is inclusive leaders. It also helps us to move past the mere cultural competency and get to cultural humility. Again, there's a lot, we've been talking for a very long time long time about cultural competencies. Now it's been like a little while, and now we're moving from cultural competencies, which is kind of like finite understanding of other people, to cultural humility, a space that you definitely want to be in, a space of self-realization and growth as you reaffirm your own culture and are confidently open to learning about others. Again, this is another concept that I would really encourage you. If you haven't heard or read about it, I would really, encourage you to know more about this cultural humility. So what are the growth opportunities in recruitment? The growth opportunity are this idea of culture fit, that we have in mind, or fit to the role in general. Talk about like culture fit, but then sometimes we have to think of like, okay, what are you really looking at? Again, if you don't experience diversity or are not open, or you think of like your own organization, more likely you are thinking of a specific person. You may not be open to someone, again, who doesn't look straight into your eyes, or somebody that you already have in mind. Standardization of process and an emphasis on compliance. Spiky profiles is also a growth opportunity. It refers to the fact that some neurodivergent employees can be much better at something, okay at something else, and not good at other things. Then there's like an established preference on extroverted behaviors. Maybe do you find yourself to prefer a certain kind of candidate? You have like, someone that usually, if you think of like your hiring or recruitment, it comes to first impressions, you find yourself like preferring someone, that exerts some kind of behaviors, focusing on essential job functions. And then also, like another area of growth opportunity would be, like questions like, how did you handle the situation? And this is like a difficult question, because it requires quick thinking, lack of work experience. Like we said, we noticed that, when we're talking about Emily, like a gap of 2 years, and then impression management, where neurodivergent employees, are more focused on knowing, are more focused on appearing neurotypical rather than focusing on their own, on the interview. So that's why this specific question may be challenging, and there is a growth opportunity. So how can we fix, like, what's the solution? Abandon the idea of culture fit or fit in general, focus on minimal core skills and qualification. Consider spiky profiles. So actually consider those spiky profiles and then match that spiky profile to the right job. Provide questions 24 hours in advance. Adopt non-interviewing method. Like, and this is something that is a tendency, a trend that has been more and more, implemented in the workplace. Team with social partners. Virginia Ability, Audience Society, Central Virginia, that's actually to access the pool of candidates, because sometimes, we are like, okay, where do I find them? And then train employees and managers on inclusive hiring. Now, what are the workplace growth opportunities? When engaging in interaction with a neurodivergent individual, it may be common a lack of eye contact, which may be perceived as a lack of attentiveness or boredom. Neurodivergent individuals may also use repetitive language or repeatedly talk about the topic of interest. Individuals who identify as neurodivergent may also have difficulty deciphering nonverbal languages, tone, facial expression, and general body language, which may represent a challenge to those who are accustomed to certain behaviors when interacting with other people. So it's important to understand that when interacting with neurodivergent individuals, we may not experience what we are accustomed to, but that does not make that the interaction is less meaningful. Camouflage or masking is also a challenge. Some neurodivergent individuals will try to mask their unique traits and act normal, The reasoning behind masking is escaping the stigma associated with neurodiversity. Bullying or being ridiculed is experienced in past social interactions. Similar to code switching, if anyone know about code switching in the workplace and in social interactions for diverse individuals or some other individuals who identify certain minorities, the act of camouflaging and masking leads to anxiety and stress, as individuals is constantly under pressure to act normal. Unfortunately, generally, individuals who are neurotypical don't understand neurodiversity, how it manifests, and what it means in the workplace. This innocent ignorance is what usually leads neurodivergent individuals to mask or camouflage their uniqueness. And then again, these are keywords, I would say uniqueness, like understanding, that they are actually masking or camouflaging a very important part of themselves that, the workplace needs. Individuals who experience difficulties with their executive functioning may be unable to focus, follow direction and plans. Also challenging may be thinking on their feet, processing questions, or speaking. So what are the solutions when it comes to workplace? And this goes into really like how do we, again, make the workplace an inclusive workplace, as far as neurodivergent talent goes. And, really the first three bullets to refer to your ability to create a psychologically safe environment. So a place where there is awareness, respect, it's a safe space for sharing, and where you give the opportunity to share how they best work. So these are really the characteristics of a psychologically safe workplace. It may be helpful then to give instructions in a verbal and written format, but also to give time to individuals to absorb all the information given. With different working memory, just need some extra time or other kinds of adjustment. Managers should be aware of these differences in working memory and should always have a designated note taker during meetings and make notes available to all afterwards. And again, this definitely would help me too, because I'm not really good at taking notes. So having a note taker, again, it just makes the workplace better for all. Each neurodivergent individual is different and may have different needs. Some may have great working memory while being dyslexic, which can make reading materials and notes difficult, but technology can help. Some software already provide assistive technology. As managers ask or collaborate, work with your IT department to learn more and find the best solution that may fit the needs of your employees. Yes, I'm reading in Keisha. All leaders need to be mandated to take course on how to work with neurodivergent employees, how to know this pattern and how to effectively communicate. Yes, because it may be, again, like I said, like I mentioned at the beginning, you are more likely to be working with someone who is neurodivergent and you just don't know. Like you would be surprised. So retention, besides, again, all the workplace that we just discussed, the standardized and ordinary assessment in career development. So exclusion, with standardized assessment of performance, you may exclude high quality talent, leading to turnover, unclear expectations, and preconceived idea of what success and growth looks like. So how do we, find a solution? Create a supportive ecosystem, clear metrics and expectation, have tailored assessments and development. Again, as Keisha was mentioning, so how so you tailor assessment and development, you tailor the work experience. That's what I may say the new model of talent management, or like leadership, inclusive management. You are there to support your employees. So work with your employees to develop performance goals. And this actually applies to all employees, since also, motivation is something that plays a big role in your performance. And motivation varies. There are like assessments that you can make your, ask your employees to take that, only on motivation, and you will be surprised because sometimes, we think, and especially in state workforce, we think that it's only the benefits that are like, the motivation, for them, but most of the time, actually, public service employees, state employees, they have like high public service motivation. And, which is something that, by the way, the Wilder School, has been, like focusing on as far as research. Public service motivation is really, really high. So like, how do you tailor the job of your employees, to then satisfy their public service motivation? And that, because again, we tend to think that, salary benefits are the only things, but it's not. Sometimes it's also the kind of assignments, speaking of, again, whether you are introvert, extrovert, where you have, you are a neurodivergent employees. So really having this, tailored assessment and career path, like template, like making this evaluation is going to help all of your employees. Now we get to, we're almost at the end, and accommodations. When it comes to accommodations, simply ask. Flexible and inflexible work cultures, are including social events, telework. So like, these are the kind of like situations or accommodations that you may be asking. Thinking in brief spaces, corner office, assistive technology, career coach, and then ask jen.org and earn.org when you are in doubt. This website, they actually provide information on accommodations. So really, as when it comes to accommodation, simply ask. And then the final remark, lastly, I think this quote really sums it up when managing your best talent. Again, definitely talking about neurodivergent employees in this session, but it is for all employees. When a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows, not the flower. And here are additional resources for you. And again, there's a lot of research articles, a lot of like articles online that you can, if you're not too much into research, but like just Harvard Business Review, Ford's articles, Inc., like TED Talks, so many that can really, inform your understanding of neurodiversity. And that was all for us today. Hope it was like maybe a little longer. We have like maybe 10 minutes for questions, comments, and
Well, Marta, that was definitely a lot of great information, and we certainly want to hear comments and questions from our attendees today. So everyone, please share your questions, share your thoughts.
And I can share the slides. I don't know if you provide the slides usually, but I can share the slides for the additional resources.
Okay, we did not provide the slides in advance. We can certainly send them out with your permission if you like after today's session.
If you all think it may be useful, yes, definitely.
Okay, so again, let's open the floor for questions or comments, or if there are specific examples that individuals would like to share, or
I like to say this is a wonderful start to exposing staff to neurodivergent. I'm gonna be honest, I had never heard of it. And I think the term is new. And as a leader, I believe I've experienced a lot of staff who are impacted by being neurodivergent. And as I look back, I possibly could have handled things a little bit differently had I known what I know about what to look for in individuals who might have some disabilities that they are afraid to bring about to their leaders because they don't want to be judged or ridiculed.
Yes.
But you do notice that there is something there, and how you address it is critical. But if you're a leader and you're not familiar with what neurodivergent looks like or how to identify, how to help, then it can become a disciplinary situation. And that's where the challenge becomes for leaders and managers, because well, I don't want to discipline someone if I know that there is that accommodation, or there is something there that I'm just not aware of. So I think this is really helpful. I was just saying that I do believe that leaders and managers and all staff really just need to be more privy to what neurodivergent looks like and how we can better assist in that area.
This is Tish Burrell again, and please pronounce your first name. I don't want to mispronounce it. Is it?
It's Vikisha.
Vikisha, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Vikisha, okay. I definitely agree with your sentiments, and I would certainly say that this should be an offering that we recommend for our management leadership team members, because when we know better, we do better.
Yes.
And without knowledge, we don't grow. So I certainly agree with the sentiments there. And I think DeAndre Williams put a comment in the chat. Yes, Vikisha, she agrees with you as well. So DeAndre, you want to come off mute and share any additional thoughts?
No, y'all go ahead. I'm just listening into the conversation. I just wanted to let Vikisha know that I completely agree with her. It's just another way of thinking that I had not even heard of the terminology either. So I touch and agree with her.
And see, that really gives that makes you understand, because definitely, okay, again, in public, service, in public policy, in management, initially, researchers and practitioners were only talking about diversity. That's why it goes back to diversity, goes back to that definition, goes back to understanding the diversity and inclusion in the workplace, and how really you really have to look at the individual, how the progression, the way it changes, the way we define individuals. So initially we thought of diversity as just race and gender and disability, but then as the population grows, and then as we become more accepting and more aware of differences and how differences again are normal, that's again why I like that Ludmila Praslova quote regarding neurodiversity as being as necessary as biodiversity. Think of biodiversity, how we actually need biodiversity in on Earth. We need it to sustain, that's how, and that's the same thing in the workplace, in society. That's why. And Anthony, how do we get other employees to empathize without telling them that other employees has health, etc.? I think role modeling, just by really being showing the efforts that you are making in being more accepting. If someone says something, that's another thing. So that's another very new trend. I would I don't want to say trend, but practice. So we're used to calling out people, for their when they say the wrong word. So what I usually try to have training on is calling people in. So you not only can role model the way you then empathize with others, the way you treat others, but then there's this way of calling people in. So having a very, a different kind of conversation rather than, having people calling out people on their mistakes, on the way they treat others. So have more of like humanize, I guess, conversation, understanding that some people may not understand the differences, and, just, not outing people, regarding their autism or like their diagnosis, because again, that's not the right way, but like really like humanizing individuals and making people understand that, those differences are just, part of humanity and of like the individual.
Okay.
You're welcome.
That is great, and thank you. And if everyone can check the chat, Kyle has put in several links where we can get the YouTube of the materials from today and just have access to the previous recordings as well. So we're almost at the top of the hour.
Yes.
And I think that I would say we should put a challenge out there to see how we can get this on the playbook for our management team, our leadership team. And the first place to start is where with ensure that we get as many CMA and VEI members to get updated in this space as well. So Kyle, do you have any comments that you'd like to drop in the chat? And again, thank you everyone for joining, and we're hopeful that you will join us on August 16th for our 10 a.m. Neurodiversity and Positivity webinar, and that will be presented by Tamara Farabee, who is an up-and-coming Ph.D. candidate as well. So looking forward to it. And again, thank you everyone for joining, and we will bid you a top of the afternoon, a top of the morning into your afternoon.
Thank you all.
And thank you, Marta. We
you're welcome.
appreciate you bringing this to us today. Okay.
Thank you.
All right.